The Galactic Council chamber on Xylos Prime was a monument to unity, a vast, breathable space filled with the soft hum of 1,000 different life support systems. Representatives from 100 species sat in their designated biospheres, their forms ranging from the ethereal, gaseous Vzar to the crystalline, arthropod-like Kthra. The atmosphere was one of practiced, if often strained, diplomacy. At the center of the Grand Hall, a holographic projection of the galaxy spun slowly, with a single, unassuming sector marked in a dim, gray light. This was the Soul Sector, the cradle of humanity. For the past 3 centuries, a galactic-wide ban had been in place. It was a decree born of fear and a profound sense of ecological and cultural superiority. The Terrans, as they were known, were a violent, chaotic, and terrifyingly resilient species. Their history was a relentless cascade of wars, a desperate scramble for resources on their overcrowded homeworld. They were unpredictable, and their technology, while effective, was often crude and dangerously unstable. The Council, representing this civilized galaxy, had agreed that humanity was a blight, a stain on the cosmos that needed to be isolated until they inevitably destroyed themselves. The High Counselor, a being of immense age from a species of wise, bioluminescent amphibians, raised a webbed appendage for silence. The motion to renew the Terran Isolation Protocol is before us. His voice echoed, a melodic, watery sound. The data indicates their interstellar expansion has ceased, confined to a few dozen systems. They are contained. A chorus of murmurs and clicks of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Kthra representative, its mandibles clicking in irritation, spoke next. Containment is insufficient. A species with their capacity for destruction should be eliminated. They are an aberration. Our histories show they nearly annihilated their own world for resources. The Vzar representative, a shimmering cloud of gas, pulsed with a pale violet light. Elimination is not our way. However, continued observation is paramount. Their internal conflicts appear to have stabilized. This is an opportunity to study their decline. The debate continued, a predictable cycle of fear, suspicion, and relief that humanity was far away. The Council was about to call for the final vote when a junior aide, a small, furry creature from a newly inducted species, scuttled into the center of the hall. It was trembling, holding a data slate. "Forgive the interruption, High Counselor," the aide squeaked, its voice high and reedy. An urgent message was intercepted. It appears to be a transmission from the Soul Sector. It is a historical document. The Deep Space Monitoring Stations flagged it as high priority. They believe it may provide context for the current Terran state. The High Counselor's luminous eyes narrowed. Context. "We have analyzed their history for centuries. Play the recording." The aide fumbled with the controls, and a screen materialized in the center of the chamber. The image was grainy, black and white, clearly from a very primitive age. It showed a massive, blocky vessel of human design, the text Ares Mission emblazoned on its side. A human male, his face gaunt and lined with worry, sat in a command chair, speaking into a camera. "This is Captain Samuel Drake of the Ares Mission. We have just entered the outer reaches of the Alpha Centauri system. It is the furthest any human vessel has ever traveled. It is a journey of hope and survival." The Council watched, a mixture of curiosity and dismissal in their collective consciousness. Another image appeared, this time a flickering, poorly defined visual of a planet, Earth, from orbit. A new voice, a female human, spoke over the top. "The arc is complete. Over 40,000 of our people are in cryo-sleep on this ship, a seed for a new beginning. The genetic banks are secure. The history of our species, our arts, our science, our entire culture has been digitized and stored within the ship's core. It is our final gift to the stars." The recording flickered again, showing what appeared to be a massive, lifeless moon. The female voice returned, her tone more somber. "The evacuation is in motion. The beacon has been activated. The message is simple. We know what we are. We know what we have done. We are not fit to inherit the stars. We are recording this so you will know that we did not intend to follow. This is humanity's apology. We are not coming." A low, derisive laugh echoed from the Draconian delegation. An apology? A primitive species finally realizing its own inadequacy. The Draconian representative sneered, its reptilian eyes gleaming. This proves our point. They are a species of guilt and self-flagellation. But the recording was not over. The image on the screen shifted again. It was the same female human, but her face was now streaked with tears. The background was chaotic, filled with frantic movement and flashing red emergency lights. The audio crackled with static, the sound of distant explosions. This is a final recording. We were wrong. We are not a species of self-destructors. We are a species of survivors. The Ares mission. It was never meant to be a seed. It was a decoy. She paused, her voice trembling but resolute. We knew what we are. And we knew what we would have to do to survive. The history we sent with the Ark is a lie. The records show the wars, the poverty, the destruction. They know our weakness. They do not know what we truly are. A chilling silence fell over the council chamber. The amusement on the Draconian's face vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion. Explain, the High Counselor commanded, his voice losing its melodic calm. The human on the screen took a deep breath. We knew the galaxy was watching. We knew you considered us a plague. We had to show you a plague, so you would never look closer. We had to make you believe our history was a story of failure, so you would never suspect the truth. Her eyes locked onto the camera, seeming to pierce through the centuries. The war, the desperation, the destruction. It was not chaos. It was a forge. It was a laboratory. We spent millennia preparing for you. We needed you to think we were broken so you would never see what was coming. She leaned forward, her expression hardening into something ancient and terrifying. We have watched you. We have studied you. We know your ships, your shields, your weapons, your precious, fragile alliances. We knew your language of power. Our scientists were not fighting each other. They were engineering a weapon. They were engineering a weapon to fight you. They engineered themselves. We aren't just survivors. We are conquerors. This recording is your only warning. You are not the apex of the galaxy. You are merely the latest challenge. The screen went black. The only sound in the vast chamber was the soft hum of the life support systems. The holographic map of the galaxy still spun slowly, but the gray light of the Sol sector now seemed to pulse with a menacing, infernal glow. The silence in the Grand Council chamber was absolute. It was a silence far deeper than the simple absence of sound. It was a silence of shock, of a foundational reality crumbling to dust. The 1,000 alien delegates stared at the blank screen, their minds struggling to process the final, damning words of a human they had dismissed as a relic of a primitive, failed species. The Kthra representative was the first to move, its crystalline carapace rattling with a sound like breaking ice. This is impossible, it hissed, its translator struggling to convey the depth of its disbelief. This is a fabrication, a trick of a desperate, dying species. Their technology was crude, their ships barely capable of light speed. They could not have engineered themselves. The Vzar representative, its gaseous form now swirling with agitated crimson tendrils, pulsed a rebuttal. The transmission was authenticated. It originated from within the Sol sector. It is old. We are not viewing a present threat, but a declaration of intent. A promise. They have had 300 years since this was sent. The Draconian representative slammed a scaled fist on his console, the sound echoing through the hall. 300 years. 3 centuries to prepare a war of cosmic annihilation while we sat here, congratulating ourselves on our enlightened containment policy. We were not isolating a problem. We were giving a predator time to sharpen its claws. The High Counselor remained motionless, his bioluminescent skin flickering with a pale, sickly light. He raised a trembling hand. Order. We must have order. We must analyze this. The veracity of the recording cannot be doubted, but its interpretation. It could be the ravings of a single, fanatical group. A final, desperate act of defiance. A new image appeared on the central screen, brought up by a frantic technical officer. It was a star chart of the Sol sector, overlaid with the latest sensor readings. High Counselor. The officer's voice was tight with barely suppressed panic. The monitoring stations have just reported an anomaly. The Terran core worlds. They are dark. Dark? Another delegate asked, a creature with multiple, spider-like legs clicking nervously. What does that mean? It means their energy signatures are dropping below detectable levels. Their orbital infrastructure is gone. Their communication frequencies are silent. It is as if the entire civilization has vanished. A wave of unsettling murmurs spread through the chamber. This was impossible. An entire interstellar civilization, albeit a small one, did not just vanish. They had been under constant observation. Their every move was supposed to be catalogued, their every whisper of technological development analyzed and dismissed. This is consistent with their strategy. The Vzar spoke, its voice now a low, grave hum. They told us they would not be where we expected them to be. They have been hiding, preparing. They have likely already begun their offensive. The Draconian was on his feet, his voice a furious roar. Begin the mobilization. Alert all fleet commands. We have been blind, arrogant fools. We know what they are. They are the plague we always knew they were, but we gave them the time to become the cure for our existence. The chamber erupted into a cacophony of voices, a jarring symphony of fear, anger, and frantic debate. The ancient, carefully cultivated peace of the galaxy was evaporating, replaced by the raw panic of a race of apex predators who had just discovered their prey was a hunter. A young tech officer, his species resembling an upright, furred otter, stumbled into the command center, his voice an urgent squeak. High Counselor, a fleet has been detected entering the outer perimeter of the Seychelles Nebula. It's massive, but it's not moving like a military formation. It's moving like a swarm. On the main screen, the tactical overlay of the Seychelles Nebula, a region of beautiful but treacherous ion storms, came into view. A torrent of crimson dots, each signifying a ship of Terran origin, was pouring out of a hidden slipstream. They didn't travel in tight, organized squadrons. They came in a wave, a chaotic, relentless tide of ships of all sizes and shapes. There were no flagships, no command vessels, no obvious hierarchy. It was anarchy in motion, a storm of metal and energy. They are not following any standard tactical doctrine, a tactical analyst reported, his brow furrowed. They are uncoordinated, moving independently. They appear to be ignoring us. They are heading straight for the nebula's core. The Council watched in confusion as the human fleet plunged directly into the heart of one of the most dangerous regions in known space, a zone of unpredictable energy surges and gravitational eddies. The Draconian representative laughed, a harsh, barking sound. They are not a threat. They are insane. They will be destroyed by the nebula's own forces. But they did not explode. They did not disappear. The Terran ships, with their crude, non-aligned hulls and seemingly inefficient engines, weaved through the ion storms with impossible grace. They didn't fight the energy surges. They seemed to absorb them, their hulls glowing with a predatory light as they used the nebula's power to accelerate. They were not being destroyed by the environment. They were being powered by it. The energy they were harvesting was a technology the Council didn't even know was possible. The High Counselor stared in stunned silence. The galaxy's entire defensive strategy was built on the assumption that the enemy would fight within the known parameters. They had built a fortress, and humanity was simply walking around it, using the galaxy itself as their weapon. The recording wasn't just a boast, it was a lesson. They hadn't just studied the galaxy's military. They had studied its physics, its geology, its very nature, and turned it all into a weapon. The Terran fleet emerged from the other side of the nebula, not diminished, but stronger. Their energy signatures were now off the charts. They were no longer a swarm of chaotic dots. They were a single, overwhelming presence. The first true battle of the war was over before it began, and they hadn't even fired a shot. The galaxy's hope for a quick and easy victory evaporated. They were facing an enemy that had already won the war, they just hadn't realized it yet. The human fleet, now a sentient, seething mass of energy, turned its gaze towards the heart of the Council's power, Xylos Prime. The panic that had gripped the Grand Council chamber transformed into a desperate, coordinated frenzy. The 3 centuries of humanity's supposed decline were now a weapon pointed directly at the heart of the galaxy. Every strategy, every treaty, every carefully crafted balance of power was a lie, built on the false foundation of Terran weakness. The galaxy was a house of cards, and humanity was a hurricane. The ancient amphibian High Counselor, his voice now stripped of its melodic calm, barked orders. All defensive fleets are to converge on the Xylos system immediately. Activate the planetary shielding network. Contact the Avar, Their telepathic abilities are our last hope for communication. This is not a war. It is a crisis of galactic survival. Across the galaxy, 1,000 different species mobilized. Warships that had stood as museum pieces for millennia were reactivated. Planetary defense grids, long considered obsolete, hummed to life. The Council's authority, often questioned, was now absolute, a final, desperate effort to unite against a common foe. They had to believe there was still time. But the swarm was faster. The Terran fleet bypassed the primary defensive choke points. They did not attack the Council's heavily fortified border worlds. They went around them, their path a testament to a mind that saw the galaxy not as a map of nations, but as a game board. They used gravity wells of gas giants to slingshot themselves at impossible speeds. They traveled through the turbulent cores of dying stars, their energy shields shifting to absorb the radiation, using the intense heat as a cloak against Council sensors. They were masters of the environment, treating the vacuum of space not as a barrier, but as a medium for their own brutal art. As the fleet approached the Xylos system, a single ship, a sleek, black vessel bristling with weaponry, broke from the swarm. It was a design never seen before, a perfect synthesis of function and intimidation. It represented a new paradigm of warfare, moving with a fluid grace that defied physics. It was not a ship of war, it was a predator, and it was on the hunt. It did not attack the incoming Council fleet. Instead, it targeted the hypercommunication relay. With a single, focused energy beam, it severed the galaxy's last tie. The Council, in the middle of coordinating a massive, galaxy-wide defense, was plunged into silence. Their unified command structure was shattered, rendering them blind and deaf to the unfolding chaos. They were a flock of birds that had been separated from their flock. "We cannot fight them like this," the Kthra representative cried, its voice a high-pitched wail of frustration. "They are everywhere and nowhere at once. We do not even know what they are fighting for." The Draconian representative snarled, his eyes gleaming with a feral light. "They are fighting for the same thing we always fought for. Conquest. Survival. Dominion. This is the truth of the galaxy they never hid. We simply chose to believe our own myth of civility." The truth of those words hung in the air, a bitter reminder of the galaxy's own long, bloody history. The Council was not a collection of peaceful philosophers. It was a predator's cartel that had successfully contained all other potential rivals. Humanity was simply the first to call their bluff. The High Counselor stared at the image of the approaching swarm, his ancient mind racing. No, it is more than that. This is not a simple conquest. They are proving a point. They are showing us that everything we believe, everything we hold dear, is a lie. They are not just defeating us, they are dismantling us. In the command centers of the Council worlds, millions of military personnel and civilians watched the same horrific truth unfold. The Terran fleet was not just destroying ships, they were systematically targeting symbols of power. A massive orbital dock, the pinnacle of the galaxy's engineering, was not destroyed but captured, its energy weapons turned against the very ships they were supposed to service. A heavily fortified planetary shield, a marvel of defensive technology, was not breached but was tricked into turning itself off by an overload of false sensor data. Their tactics were not just effective, they were humiliating. They were fighting with a creativity born of a chaotic upbringing, a history of constantly having to adapt to survive against overwhelming odds. Humanity had never known a golden age of peace. Their entire history was a brutal, unending school of war. The galaxy, on the other hand, had become stagnant, its military doctrines as old and calcified as its governing body. They had forgotten how to improvise. Then, the Terran flagship, the sleek black Predator, moved into orbit above Xylos Prime. A single, focused, and overwhelming transmission flooded every frequency. It wasn't a demand for surrender or a declaration of war. It was a recording, the same recording they had played for the Council, but this time, it was accompanied by images. Live images of the captured worlds, images of the helpless fleets, images of the broken communication relays. The face of Captain Drake, the human from the ancient recording, appeared on screens across the planet. But it was not the same face. It was a projection, a ghost. The voice that spoke was not the voice of a desperate man, but of an avenger. 300 years ago, The voice echoed across the council world. We sent a message of apology. A plea. We told you who we were, and we showed you our weakness. You looked at our wars, our destruction, our chaos, and you called us a plague. You created a law to contain us, to isolate us, to wait for our inevitable extinction. You gave us nothing. Your contempt was the greatest gift you could have given us. You forced us to look inward. You forced us to build not for peace, but for war. You made us into what you always feared we were. We didn't just become survivors. We became the weapon you deserved. The revelation of the Terran fleet's true power sent seismic shocks through the galaxy. The old assumptions of peace and council supremacy evaporated, replaced by a chilling reality. A species the galaxy had dismissed as a failed experiment had evolved into a perfect instrument of destruction. The war was no longer a matter of repelling an invasion. It was a desperate fight for the very soul of galactic civilization. The swift, surgical strikes on council infrastructure were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Xylos Prime, the glittering heart of galactic diplomacy, was now a planet under siege, its population held hostage by the silent, watching Terran fleet. Communication was a one-way street, with the humans dictating terms through their towering, black ship emissary. The galaxy's response was immediate, but fractured. The Draconians, their pride wounded beyond repair, advocated for a scorched earth policy. They wanted to destroy the human worlds, to make them pay for their betrayal. The Kthra sought to retreat, to build new defenses in the uncharted void, and hoped the humans would lose interest. The Vzar, ever the analysts, saw a different path, one that required a deeper understanding. They have exposed our vulnerabilities. The Vzar representative pulsed to the assembled High Council, its form shifting with agitation. This is not a war of annihilation. This is a war of revelation. They have shown us the rot in our own system. Our structures are brittle. Our alliances are a house of cards. The Terran threat is not the only one we face. We need to listen to them, not to appease them, but to understand what we have become. The debate raged on, a cacophony of fear and pride. They were all desperate, the galaxy's leaders trapped in a cycle of self-destruction. They were so consumed by their own internal conflicts that they failed to see the new player on the field. The Terran flagship, a sleek black monstrosity, continued to broadcast the ancient recording on a loop, a constant reminder of their origins and their justification. It was a mantra, a hammer beating against the foundations of galactic civilization. Every council world, every ship, every colony was forced to listen to the story of humanity's final, desperate act. Then, a new signal broke through the monotony. It was a message, broadcast from the black ship, not to the council, but to the galaxy at large. It was a personal message from the human commander, a woman with a voice that was calm and resolute. Citizens of the galaxy, the voice said, we are not here to destroy you. We are here to liberate you. You have been told your entire lives that you are a peaceful, unified people. You are not. You are a collection of species bound by fear and the threat of force. You are subjects, not citizens. We have seen the files. We have studied your enlightenment. It is a prison of ideology. Your custodians are your wardens. Our war is not against you. It is against the system that has kept you weak, docile, and easily manipulated. The message was a revolutionary spark in a powder keg. On dozens of worlds, the seeds of dissent that had lain dormant for centuries began to sprout. The young, the ambitious, the disenfranchised, they had been told their whole lives that the council was a perfect, benevolent institution. But the humans were not just a threat. They were a mirror, reflecting the galaxy's own internal ugliness. The Avar, the telepathic species, were the first to respond. They were a peaceful race who had long felt the constant, subtle pressure of the council's mental domination. The Terran broadcast was a confirmation of their suspicions. They began to communicate their knowledge to other species, planting the seeds of doubt with a subtle telepathic touch. The humans didn't just fight with ships, they fought with ideas. The chaos was a beautiful, terrifying storm. The galactic fleet was in disarray. Some captains, horrified by the revelation and inspired by the Terran message, refused to fire on human vessels. Others, fanatically loyal to the council, became reckless, their attacks wild and uncoordinated. The humans were no longer just a physical threat. They were an ideological virus, rewriting the galaxy's very sense of self. On a colony world on the edge of the Council's power, a Terran landing party made contact with the local population. They didn't come as conquerors. They came as liberators. They offered technology, medicine, and a terrifying truth. The Council's control was a lie. They showed the colonists the crippling debt, the manipulated economies, the centuries of psychological conditioning. It was a brutal, honest, and ultimately freeing revelation. The war shifted. It was no longer a battle for territory or resources. It was a battle for the hearts and minds of 1 trillion beings. The humans had redefined the conflict. They were not just a plague. They were a cure. They were a force for a brutal truth, and that truth was far more devastating than any energy weapon. The Great Armada of the Council, once a symbol of unity and power, now stood as a testament to a failing system. The Terran fleet, for all its terrifying power, was not the end of the galaxy. It was the beginning of a painful but necessary evolution. The war, if it could still be called that, entered its final phase not with a thunderous battle, but with a quiet, humiliating whimper. The human strategy had achieved its purpose. The Galactic fleet, once the most powerful military force in known history, was now a shattered, demoralized collection of ships. The Council, the grand governing body of the galaxy, had been exposed as a corrupt, self-serving institution. The High Counselor, his ancient, luminous skin now dull with exhaustion, faced the reality of his defeat. His beloved galaxy, the vision of unity he had dedicated his life to building, was in ruins. But the humans were not interested in annihilating them. They were interested in something far more profound, a new beginning. The Terran commander, a woman who embodied the human spirit of relentless adaptation, made a final broadcast. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was an offer. We have shown you the lie of your existence. We have shattered your empire and broken your pride. Now, we offer you a choice. You can continue to fight, to die in defense of a system that was built on fear and exploitation. Or you can accept the truth. You can accept that you were not a perfect union. You were a collection of captives, and we are the ones who have set you free. The message was met with a deafening silence. But on the ground, on a million different worlds, a different kind of revolution was taking place. The people, the ordinary citizens who had been the foundation of the Council's power, began to make their own choices. They chose to listen. They chose to accept the human offer. It was a diplomatic victory that no weapon could have achieved. The humans hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had convinced it to surrender its illusions. The Terran fleet began to withdraw, not in retreat, but in a gesture of good faith. They didn't occupy the planets. They left them to rebuild. They offered their advanced technology and their unique perspectives, not as a master to a slave, but as a partner to a partner. The Great Fleet, once a symbol of galactic unity, was retired. The soldiers who had been conscripted to fight were allowed to return to their homes. The Council was dissolved, and in its place, a new, more democratic body was formed. The process was chaotic and messy, but it was genuine. The galaxy was no longer a prison. It was a project. The humans, the plague of the galaxy, were now its greatest teachers. They had taught the galaxy the most brutal lesson of all, that peace and unity are not the natural state of a civilization. They are a choice that must be made every day. And sometimes, to achieve that peace, you have to burn down everything you thought you knew. The recording of Captain Drake, the farewell message of a doomed civilization, was enshrined in the new galactic archives. It was no longer a symbol of human shame, but a testament to their resilience and their incredible, almost impossible, capacity for change. It was a history of failure that had forged the most powerful force the galaxy had ever seen. The Sol sector was no longer a gray, forgotten blight on the star charts. It was the heart of a new galaxy, the crucible where a broken civilization had been forged into a weapon of liberation. Humanity, the ultimate outsiders, had become the galaxy's conscience, its mirror, and its salvation. The war was over, but the true battle was just beginning. It was a battle for the future, a future where the lessons of the past, the fear, the chaos, the incredible capacity for both destruction and renewal, would shape the destiny of 1 billion worlds. The humans had not just defeated the galaxy, they had saved it from itself. They had proven that the only way to survive the stars was to embrace the very chaos that made them a threat, to turn their greatest weakness into their ultimate strength. The galaxy had dismissed the human ban, and now, the entire galaxy was being rewritten by the echo of a single, desperate recording.